Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started here right at 9 a.m. We will speak to you momentarily. All right, it is 9 a.m. We're gonna kick this off. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Pennsylvania Petroleum Association's monthly webinar series. My name is Ted Harris. I'm with the PPA. We have numerous of our members that are joining us this morning that have participated in this monthly webinar series in the past. So we'd like to welcome you and thank you again for joining us. And we also have some, I believe, some individuals that have not joined us in the past. So again, thank you for your interest in the topic and taking some time this morning to listen in. Before we get started, just a really couple quick housekeeping items. From a attendee perspective, you're going to be on mute for the duration of this webinar. With that being said, you can still ask questions using the question feature in GoToWebinar by typing them. And what we'll do as John moves along with his presentation, I will collect them on my end and we'll do a Q&A on the back end of John's presentation once he wraps up. This topic specifically is, you know, every business is somewhat different, right? And there's certain, you know, considerations that you probably need to make in terms of implementing this within your business. John's going to talk about this briefly, but he is, regardless if you're a QualPay client or not, you know, there's willingness from his end to you know, if there's a question that's better off on a one-on-one basis, you can certainly, you know, reach out to John to have that conversation. But generally speaking, if you have questions on your end, we will keep it anonymous in terms of how I'm going to moderate it. But if you have a question that's relevant, I'm guessing that's probably relevant to, you know, 5 or 10 other people on the webinar here today. So please ask questions. We like interaction for these webinars, and just keep that in mind. We will be, if you're attending here today, you will be getting a copy of the PDF presentation. We also will be recording this and putting this on the PPA's YouTube page. Or if you would like to view it again or share it with someone else from your team, you'll be able to do that. And then John will also they have some additional resources through the QualPay website that I believe he's going to be sharing as well. So hopefully there'll be multiple resources for you to walk away with here where you can reference it at a later date. Before I introduce John, I'd just like to give a quick overview of QualPay as a company and the PPA's relationship with QualPay. So our association actually moved to QualPay about 2.5 years ago in terms of all of our credit card processing through the association. We have multiple entities. So for us, we had a lot of different gateways and a lot of different processors in place, and it's been a really good experience to consolidate that and have one vendor and you know, really have the ability to have a, you know, great two-way communication with that vendor as it relates to this topic. For most people on the webinar here, including myself, credit card processing is not something you're thinking about on a daily basis. So to have a trusted partner is crucial, regardless if that's QualPay or someone else. So I would like to just, you know, thank John from that, you know, that experience. It's been certainly beneficial for the association. We also, from a larger association perspective, QualPay is one of our preferred partners, and I know we have multiple, you know, PPA members that are utilizing their services across the Commonwealth. So this topic in general, you know, we really try with our monthly webinar series to bring relevant topics to our membership, and not just our membership, the industry stakeholders in general. Credit card processing fees, as you all know, they're not they're just continuing to grow. You have more and more customers that are using credit cards. This is, and for most companies, becoming certainly a top 10, if not maybe a top 5 expense within their P&L. And it's something from the association side, we get questions about on a pretty routine basis about different, just different considerations about credit card fees. So we're really hopeful this topic today is going to be beneficial for you. Again, we'd just like to thank John and QuillPay for being a trusted partner and a resource here. And like I said, I just want to emphasize this, through this relationship with QuillPay and the PPA, John's been available in the past as these questions come up, and it's something that we're not able to answer from the association side. John's been able to really kind of jump in and give some resources to our membership, again, regardless if you're a QuillPay customer or not. So please keep that in mind. I know that's been beneficial for some of our members that have taken advantage of that. So with that being said, I would like to introduce John Gilbert at this point. John is with QuillPay, and John will be covering the topic, understanding surcharges and convenience fees. John, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks, Ted. And as hey guys, and as Ted was mentioning too, I'll provide my contact information after the call. Not only if you guys want to discuss this presentation in particular, but I'm always here. We're always here if you have any questions about anything. What would happen if I do this? You could think of us, kind of as a consultant, or like an accountant, where if you want to know about new rules and regulations, maybe some new rates that came out, or some ways that you can save money, or hey, I just purchased a company. How the heck do I get all of these credit card tokens from this other processor to our processor? We're using all these different solutions. How can we eliminate some third parties? You name it. There's a lot of things that you could be asking. And spring's generally a good time to be looking at your rates as well. I'll be at the PPA Fall Energy Conference, the NPGA Expo, a lot of the energy shows everywhere across the country. So, don't hesitate to give me a call. And I'm going to go over some of this. I know that you're all very busy, and especially on a Tuesday morning. So I'm going to go through some of this information pretty quickly, just to give you a baseline understanding. And I encourage you, if you have any questions, book a one-on-one meeting. Visit our booth at any of the shows, and we'd be happy to present this information to you. A lot of this info is, does change, from state to state. So especially if your company crosses state lines, there might be some further considerations that you might want. So I'm gonna close my screen here to save the bandwidth and go on with the presentation. So if you have any questions, I'll be taking questions at the end, and again, I'll have my contact information. Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay, so the difference between so a lot of times when I hear about surcharges or convenience fees, a lot of times people get this information confused. Okay, so I first just want to clarify the difference between a surcharge and a convenience fee, because there's different rules, and they're a little bit different. So I think what most people use, in terms of offsetting cost, are surcharges, and convenience fees have been something that have been available for a longer time. But a surcharge is a fee that's charged for the privilege of using a credit card as a form of payment. It adds a percentage to the sale, 1%, 2%, 3%. A convenience fee is a little bit different. That is a actual set fee. So regardless of the amount, it's always the same fee. And a convenience fee is used for essentially when you want to charge people for the convenience of using a different channel of payment. And so we'll go through some one-on-one examples of each one, but first we'll just talk about surcharges. So an example of a surcharge would be you're an energy marketer. You know that you have some commercial customers, and maybe it's a school, it's a very large business or a building, and you deliver fuel to them, and generally they're much larger transaction sizes, and they always give you a commercial card. And a commercial card is when it has the business name on the card as opposed to a person's name. And those cards are significantly more expensive to accept, especially if you don't have the right technology. And so, and generally, the business owner, they want to put money on their Amex card, right, or their Capital One business card, because they're going to get points for this and so forth. And so, because these tickets are much higher, and because they're more expensive, you can charge a fee to these. And so the example here is a 2.5% surcharge on a $1,000 transaction. So it'd be $25, and that would go on there. And so it's a very easy way to recoup the cost of the fees with accepting credit cards. Now, some of the things that you need to consider for surcharging is that you need to disclose in every single form that you surcharge. So if you're doing it online or over the phone, you need to have a script that tells people that they're going to be surcharging. If you're giving people receipts, they need to be on the receipts. And so not only do you have to follow card brand guidelines, so Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, but there's also state and local guidelines to consider as well. So let's start with the card brand rules here, because they're actually the most significant. Okay. So the first rule is that the surcharge must be no greater than the merchant's average discount rate for credit card acceptance. What does that mean? So if you want to accept a surcharge for all your commercial customers, you're going to want, so your payment processor should be able to calculate this cost for you and give you a number back. So it might be 2%, 2.3, depending on the cards. And so generally it's always best, because the card brands, they actually, it took a lot of legislative approval in order to get the ability to surcharge on here, but the card brands still don't love it. So they have all kinds of rules, and they're definitely making sure that you're following the rules. We get audited all the time for all the different rules, and they impose fines. And so, we always make sure that everything is zipped up and done the proper way, because these guys are always paying attention to this. And us as a payment processor, it's in our best interest to help you recoup fees, but also to lower fees. We are not Visa, we're not MasterCard, we're not American Express, we're not Discover. We're just passing through these costs. And so it's in our mutual best interest to keep us and the merchant your fees as low as possible, or give you the ability to lessen those fees or offsetting those fees by doing a surcharge. The surcharge also needs to be the same for all transactions, regardless of the card issuer. So you can't say, hey, Visa is the most expensive card type. We're going to charge 3% if you're using a Visa. We're going to charge 1% if you're using a MasterCard, and 2% if you're using an Amex. You actually have to charge a uniform number across all of them, and they do pay attention to this. So again, we're going to, if you asked us to calculate your rates, we would identify all the interchange charges, all the charges that you're getting for each individual card, blend them all together, divide them up, and give you a recommended amount. Usually that amount's around 2% or 3%. As we talked about before, some card brands, Visa and MasterCard, require merchants to disclose everywhere that they're going to access a surcharge, and the surcharge cannot exceed 4% in any event. You also can't surcharge on prepaid cards or debit cards. And so one of the questions you might be having is, how the heck do I know what kind of card that these customers are using? Well, if you're using our software, and if a software company is using our software, we have technology that essentially declines the transaction, or it doesn't allow it to authorize if you're using a prepaid card or a debit card. And that's really important because you don't want to do something that you don't. So for example, Destwin is a company that is utilizing surcharges, and if you went on and if a Destwin merchant had enabled surcharging on there and you went on and tried to pay with a debit card, that surcharge would not happen. And so they have programmed everything so that it all works properly. So it's a very effective solution. You can lean on the technology provider of the payment company to kind of set these rules in place, okay? We're essentially putting in these bumper lanes so that you can't misbehave, okay? So we're gonna make sure that you're disclosing all the information, that you're charging the right amount, and that you're charging the right kind of cards. The other thing too is that you wanna make sure that the actual zip code of the cardholder is in a state that allows for surcharges to happen as well, because each state has different laws, and we'll talk about that on the next slide. Sorry, and the one last slide, the one last bullet here is that any refunds also must include the surcharge fees as well. So if if you accept $25 for the $1,000 charge and then you give them a refund, that $25 needs to go back, even though that incurred a cost for you as the merchant. In the state rules, currently 47 states allow for surcharging. Surcharging right now is prohibited in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine. But as I wrote this, there are additional requirements and risks for surcharging in California, Colorado, Florida, Kansas, New York, Oklahoma, and Texas. So it's always best just to kind of have a conversation with your payment provider just to learn about some additional rules. Like for example, Visa allows for up to a 3% surcharge in their core rules. However, Colorado permits only 2%. And so if you're doing business in Colorado and Wyoming, well, you have two different fees that you can have, right? Wyoming, you can charge up to 4%, but Colorado has 2%. So how do you get your software, to understand where your cardholder is and make sure that you can only surcharge the permitted amount? Again, that's for your payment company and your software provider to figure out so that you can use these rules and behave the right way. There's always legislation in place. New York has been doing quite a bit, and you really never know. And so it's always important to, that you have your legal counsel involved, but we're always going to tell you if there's a new rule right now. But currently, surcharging is only prohibited in Connecticut, Maine, and Massachusetts. And most of you folks I know are in Pennsylvania, so you're all in good shape. So you can do surcharges without a problem there, or without any kind of risk of any Maine residents mixing in your pool. And now I want to talk about convenience fees. These ones are a little bit different. So convenience fees, again, are charged for the privilege of paying for a product or service using a non-customary payment channel. So, and this is kind of something that is kind of going away with the advent of technology, and usually just going to be surcharges. But it's, a convenience fee is a charge for the convenience of being able to pay using alternative payment methods. So right when you first had websites coming up, people were trying to offset the cost of building that website. And so they actually may have chose to use a convenience fee for paying on the web in order to kind of make some of that money back. But now you're actually seeing it the other way, where it's, hey, you're not going to pay any kind of fees by paying online, by writing us a check and so forth. But if, say if you call into our phone, our phone line where we have to actually have our receptionist pick up the phone, take your credit card number, then we're going to do that. And so here's an example right here. So, an energy marketer sends an invoice in the mail. You can pay by check, pay online via the website. But again, for a fee, the customer can call and have their payment processed over the phone. That makes sense, right? So, we want to encourage everyone to kind of automate, maybe do recurring payments, maybe just log on to your, to your website portal, Destwin or what have you, and pay your bill. But if you're going to call, call us where we actually have to pick up the phone and stop what I'm doing and take this number and enter it into our virtual terminal, whether it's a check or a credit card, we're going to impose this fee. And so really the convenience fee, it's not about making your money back, really. It's more about just trying to get people in the right lane, right? You're just trying to steer people away from doing the thing that takes a lot of resources to do, just kind of automate things. And that's really what convenience fees are more for. The guidelines are a little bit different for a convenience fee. They must be a flat fixed amount. The payment must take place in a non-standard payment channel. Again, so it's like answering the phone, right? And the fee must be applied to all the means of payment. So that means if you're accepting credit cards or check, each one through that means accepts that fee. So again, so it's if someone's calling in and you want to have a convenience fee for when people call in, it has to be for check and for credit card. And the fee must be included in the transaction amount. And then you just can't be a completely card not present environment. You need to be able to offer some way for people to pay without having this convenience fee, right? And then you can't do it for recurring payments, which makes sense, right? Recurring payments are automated. Those are easy. They don't really take a lot of time for you to do, right? Unless you don't have account updater and you're calling people to update the credit card information over the phone and so forth. But that's basically it right there. And so that's just a quick breakdown right there of the differences of convenience fees and surcharges. Again, surcharges they're much more regulated. They are flat percentages as opposed to a flat fee. And convenience fees are the flat fees, and so they each have rules and state laws and so forth. And again, if you're a company that has that may cross some state lines and you may be dealing with some different surcharge amounts and so forth, I always recommend you contact your payment company and also your legal counsel just to kind of make sure that you've thought of everything. But your payment company should have some sample notices. They should have the software in order to present that information. Some other things that you also should consider if you want to add these surcharges, you want to notify your processing partner 30 days in advance when you wish to begin your surcharge program. And that conversation be happening many months before that, probably, right? Because you want to make sure you have all your ducks in a row. But essentially, the card brands have different registration processes. So with, for example, MasterCard wants you to essentially write a letter 30 days in advance in which you wish to begin that program. And then the payment processor is also going to go through, okay, are you completing all these steps? For example, we have a 16-step process to make sure that you and your software company are going through all the proper channels and have all the proper techniques all in there. But you also want to make sure that the software provider can accommodate the charging the fees to their platform. So just because your payment provider can do it doesn't mean that your software provider can do it. They need to do the integration work just like any other payments company. So and again, you're going to want to make sure that software company can also use the payment company's APIs so that they block zip codes of certain states, right? So that you can't charge someone on from a state that can't allow surcharging, or maybe you want to make sure that you block the debit cards from being able to be accepted and so forth. So you want to verify that the software is not going to charge anything that can't be done. Okay. The fourth bullet, you also need to you want to be able to report this information too, right? Because you're collecting fees, you're collecting revenue. So you need to be able to separate this line item so it doesn't interfere with your weights and measures reporting, but also just in any of your other accounting information too. So you want to make sure that your software provider and your payment provider can give you those reports that can tell you at the end of the year, hey, what did I surcharge? What did I offer for convenience fees? Okay. And again, post disclosures to inform your customers your intent to surcharge. So, again, if you went on a Destwin site, on their portal, and you noticed that someone was accepting surcharges, they would have, the percentage on there. You wouldn't be able to do the voids, or it would essentially not allow any cards from any states that are prohibited. The percentage would actually be the correct percentage, because you have to decide on the amount that you want to surcharge. And again, we always recommend that you have the payment company assess your surcharge fee for you. This is going to keep you out of hot water. It's going to make sure that you don't get fined or audited in any ways as well. So again, we always make sure that you follow the proper channels, talk to your payment provider, talk to your software provider, and just make sure. And then another thing too, that this time of year that you want to do is just make sure that you're doing all that you can first to save money on your credit card processing, right? Maybe your state can't allow surcharging. Maybe it's going to take a few months for your software provider to be able to do it. What can you do right now to mitigate the cost of your credit card acceptance? All of you probably know that there are utility rates for energy marketers, for MasterCard, Discover, and American Express. The American Express one came out in October of 2023. That utility rate of 75 cents a transaction for those transactions under $1,000 and 1.5% for those over 1,000. But are you receiving services rates for Visa? Visa is easily now the most expensive card to accept, so making sure that you're getting the price breaks for the services rates for Visa is very important. If you're using an older payment technology, you may have a different merchant account for MasterCard, American Express, and Discover, a different one for Visa, or you may just not be getting those rates because you need dual MCCs in order to get both the services rates and the utility rates. So it's 4900 MCC code for MC, Discover, and American Express, and 5938 for Visa in order to get those special rates. But what I was alluding to earlier, which I see on most energy marketers' credit card statements, is that most energy marketers are not getting the proper rates when they're accepting commercial cards. And that's because the card brands want some additional information called level 2 and level 3 data with that transaction. Okay, so they want some additional weights and measures. They want your merchant account number, they want your invoice number, the tax information, and so forth, passed with that data. And if you do pass that data, you actually get a much lower price in your commercial cards. 9 out of 10 statements that I review for merchants that are accepting commercial cards are not doing this properly. And you'd be surprised, because some of the largest energy marketers in the entire company we've seen not doing this correctly, and the savings are substantial. So I always recommend that you get an audit of your credit card acceptance, especially if you accept cards from businesses or governments. And then also remove unnecessary third-party fees, just like the Pennsylvania Petroleum Association did, combining a merchant account provider that can be a gateway provider and an ACH provider too. And then lastly, enroll an account updater. This will help you from getting declines essentially from your recurring payments. This is a software that many payment providers have that will reach out and update any expired credit cards. I know we just went through a lot of information, a lot of bullets, a lot of dense information. And so I just wanted to provide some time for some questions. If anyone has any, feel free to write them in the chat or to raise your hand. Also, just feel free to contact me at john@qualpay.com.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
We did have some questions come in here. I'm going to work through them again. If you joined late and didn't hear the front end of how we kicked off the webinar here, you can ask questions, but you're gonna have to do that by typing it into the question panel on GoToWebinar. So first question that came in was on the front end of your presentation. I think it was probably slide 4 roughly, when you were talking about surcharges. The question is specifically, how is the merchant's average discount rate figured out or configured?
That's a great question. So what your payment company will do is look through the data. So you have what's called an interchange rate, which is the rate that you pay by the card type that you accept. And usually on your statement, it's broken down. Visa services, product one, blah blah blah. And so you should have on your statement an interchange table that has all those rates. So your credit card processor is going to calculate all those rates and then just divide it. They'll essentially add up your fees and divide that, or add up your fees and divide it by your volume and get a rate. And so if you accept a lot of commercial cards, those rates tend to be a little bit higher. And so we take all of the transactions that don't include the debit cards because you can't charge for debit cards. And so calculate the rate and give it back to you. And so usually we'll go through an entire year's worth of your data to give you the most accurate rate. And if you're curious about what your rate would look like, I'd be happy to take a look at your interchange tables.
All right. Next question, how can we tell if we are receiving the proper rates as referenced on the spring cleaning checklist?
That's a great question. Generally just by getting an audit is the easiest way. So what a payment provider could tell you is essentially they'll line up all the interchange rates you're receiving on one side, and then on the other side they'll show the lowest rate that you could possibly get. So the easiest way is to look at your statement. Not all statements are equal. So if you're with TSYS or Global, that might look different than a Tiger statement or a QualPay statement, or Avitas. And so you can send your statements to me, and we'll put it all in a spreadsheet and give you a nice succinct audit showing all the rates that you're accepting, what percentage of cards that you're accepting are hitting the target interchange rate, which means that you're getting the lowest rate possible. And so you'll be able to see what your current rates are and what your future rates would be if you had the right technology. But I would say, 99 out of 100 statements that I look at, there's always something that we can point out and something that we can shave off. So I recommend, just practicing good hygiene by just getting your statements reviewed, once a year and seeing what you can do if there's any creeping fees and so forth, especially if you haven't changed providers in a while, or if you've acquired a company, you might not know. And so we'll walk you through your statement and then teach you essentially literacy, essentially show you how you can look in the future for all those rates.
What's more common for a deliverable fuel marketer, surcharges or convenience fees? What do you see with not just QualPay clients, but in general within the industry?
So what I see mostly is you have to consider your customers, right? So if you do a lot of residential deliveries, and you might have some will call people in your town who advertise the lowest price, you have to consider, what's my customer going to think if I add a $5 charge here, or a $20 charge here? Are they going to go to the energy marketer across the street, right? So generally what I see is that most people, for residential customers, they don't do surcharges, but they do to their commercial customers, the ones that tend to have the larger transaction sizes and use the more expensive cards. That's what I'm seeing right now. The people who are, the PPA members that have used this service so far have chosen just to do it for the commercial side. And on the residential side, they kind of build those fees into their, into their core price, essentially, so that their customers don't balk at it, because generally a business owner is not going to care, if because they're getting their points anyways, and their business is paying for those fees, so they're less price elastic for that kind of surcharge.
We got a few different questions about will the PDF and the recording be available, and the answer is yes. You will be getting an automated email tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the recording, and that will also include a downloadable link to the PDF that John reviewed here today. So you will be getting that, and you're able to share that with your team as you see fit, or obviously rewatch it as you see fit. And then we will also be putting it on our PPA YouTube page, which has, we've been doing this monthly webinar series for 5+ years. It has dozens and dozens of other webinars on multiple topics that you would be able to reference if you have any interest in doing so. So that information will be coming. Is charging fees for debit cards vary in restaurant settings attached to a convenience store?
No, it doesn't, but it isn't like but you can, a lot of the software is like Toast, which a lot of the quick serve restaurants use, allow the restaurants to kind of add any fees that they want. So you might see like a kitchen fee, or that you're seeing now, like a lot of restaurants, they've had to, they haven't want to increase the price of their food, right? Because vegetable oil has gone way up, and all these costs are increasing, and they don't just want to increase the cost of pizza because the cheese and the sauce has gone up. So how else can they do it? It's like, well, we'll add a bar fee, we'll add this fee and this fee, just because the software allows you to do it doesn't mean that you should do it, or that it's actually legal to do. So I would say I would be very careful using surcharges in any situation like that. So a lot of the restaurants aren't looking into that first. It's kind of like if you use QuickBooks as an accounting software, they kind of allow you to do a lot of editing that you shouldn't be able to do for classifications. And a lot of times if you switch accountants, they're like, hey, what'd you do here? This isn't correct. And the same can go for surcharges. So I think you definitely see surcharging way more in the quick serve fast food industry than anything, but it doesn't change the state regulations at all. So what I had just mentioned and underlined in the presentation are the state laws.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that. If from a state perspective, if you have a specific question, John's product, I don't want to QuellPay is more focused on the deliverable fuel side. We do have resources for convenience stores if you're interested in going down that route, and also the association can be a resource for you in terms of a liaison with Pennsylvania Weights and Measures. So we've had multiple questions come up in the past where, scenario X, which would be XYZ in terms of what this would look like, is that feasible under the current state law? We've gotten, that type of clarification for our members in the past, and we're willing, for any member to do that for you on a very specific scenario-based question if you have them. So please use the association as a resource on that, and just keep that in mind regardless of the question here as it relates to state law. But broadly speaking, as John already alluded to, Pennsylvania does not have the rigorous requirements that some of these other states such as Maine or Connecticut have that specifically prohibits surcharging or convenience fees. John, next question, I'm pulling a quote from you, and hopefully you're going to be able to grab onto this quicker than I am. So why can you not use this in a quote unquote card not present environment?
You can use surcharges in a card not present environment. One of the rules is that for convenience fees is that it can't just be internet only. So because the convenience fees is about, you're basically charging so for a convenience fee, you're basically charging a fee for the convenience of doing something. And so if everybody has to go through the same payment option, there's only one option. So there's no convenience, essentially. There's no one or the other. For surcharging, you can do surcharging just through e-commerce. So for example, if you if you, I know I keep using Deswin as an example, but they're a nice provider, and so if you have Deswin for your portal where where all your customers pay their bills, right? You can turn it on so your commercial customers are only paying that surcharge fee when they're when they're on Deswin. So you could just have the surcharges, or just have the only way that you accept payments be through that portal right there, and you can turn surcharging on, whether it's for residential, whether it's for commercials or not. So you can do that. And feel free to give me a call if you have additional questions, if you want to talk more in detail about that.
Okay, next question. This is convenience store related, and I'm going to follow up with this individual afterwards, but I'm going to also ask it to you, John, just to get your reaction to it. In the retail gasoline station business, do these rules apply to cash/credit pricing? Is there a limit to what the credit upcharge can be? So right, so you see a lot of stations in Pennsylvania that have a 10-cent discount between credit card and cash. Is there any limit between those two price points?
Not that I know of. That's that's called cash discounting, essentially. Just adding, when you essentially have a price and then you have a price that's a little bit less expensive for cash, and that is a convenient way of skirting certain surcharging fees when it's not prohibited. You see a lot of people in New York doing that, because for a while you couldn't surcharge, but you could cash discount. So it is a way to kind of work through the kind of the terms and conditions of the legislative. So again, with anything like this, it's always super important. I always recommend that you also consult with your legal counsel as well.
Thanks. And again, I will follow up with the individual that asked that question. You mentioned you usually don't, on the deliverable fuel side, you mentioned you usually don't see surcharging used in residential applications. What about convenience fees for residential deliveries?
Yeah, and again, it's if you're going to do the convenience fee, it's if you're trying to recoup your cost, really, it's surcharging is the way to go, other than just building into your price. A convenience fee, you really don't want to use that to offset your price, because again, it has to be a fixed amount, and so you never know what your customers are going to be ordering. And the convenience fee needs to be the same for whatever mode of payment it is. So you could do it just to gain a few bucks, but like every single time you do that, you have to always kind of think about what your customer is going to think, right? Whether it's a convenience fee or a surcharge, how they're going to react to that. And for me personally, I use the same oil company to deliver my fuel, and so if they did that, I probably wouldn't change, because they've earned my business because of their great support. But yeah, you really got to consider if the person across the street is also charging that fee, and if they're very price sensitive, they're just going to go with the lower fee.
Is that product specific, right? So if you select a $5 convenience fee for diesel fuel, does that also have to be applied for propane, or can you play with that?
Yeah, you would, and so you'd want to have that for convenience fee, yes. So it'd have to be uniform across that channel. Okay. So like basically your all of the things inside that website would have to have that same convenience fee, so regardless of what it was.
Okay. Well, we do, like I said, these webinars once a month, and this is the most questions we've gotten so far in 2024, John. So congratulations, you get the award there to date. We'll give it 30 seconds to see if anything else comes in here before we wrap up. But before we wrap up, John, I don't know if you have any closing comments for the group here today.
Yeah, just like a good accountant is trying to make you pay less taxes to the tax man, a good processor is trying to get you to mitigate the cost versus the card brands. So the big bad card brands, we are driving down cost and, and doing everything that we can for you to pay as little as possible.
I'll put you on the spot just real quick before we wrap up. I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this question. I'm just interested to hear your reaction to it. But how do you foresee the Capital One acquisition playing out here with potentially having a third, major processor in play? Any thoughts on that?
More competition, the better. As you saw with the last settlement, that was you guys had a great article on the PPA notes on Monday, just about the whole settlement for the car brands right now to not increase their fees for 5 years. I thought was kind of BS, because they've pumped their fees for the last 5 years. So them saying that they're not increasing their fees is nothing, because they actually need to decrease their fees because they're too high. And so Capital One adding anybody to the competition is only going to drive down price. So I'm more competition, the better.
Agreed. Okay, we didn't get any more questions in. I would again, John, I'd like to thank you for your presentation today and your expertise on the topic. Thank you to everyone. We had over 50 people participate here today in terms of being on, and just appreciate your time and taking 45 minutes out of your morning here on a Tuesday. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. And like I said, you'll be getting some follow-up information from us here in the next 24 hours with the webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you.